The Galactic Council rarely concerned itself with the affairs of individual species, especially those on the fringes of galactic influence. Yet humanity, the so-called Deathworlders, had a knack for drawing attention in the most chaotic ways. Officially, Earth's designation as a death world referred to its perilous environment, a place where survival required resilience, adaptability, and a touch of madness. Unofficially, it also described the terrifying capabilities of its inhabitants. Most species approached humans cautiously, treating them as volatile allies or avoiding them altogether. But the Galactic Council had made a grave miscalculation by underestimating their special forces. It began on the frozen moon of Glaver 7, a desolate wasteland of jagged ice fields, boiling geothermal vents, and constant electrical storms. Task Force Raven, an elite unit of human operatives, had been stationed there under mysterious orders. The moon was strategically irrelevant, or so it seemed. Few ventured there, even among mercenaries. That's what made it the perfect place for the Council to send their hired killers. The Umbra Blades, an infamous mercenary company made up of multiple alien species, prided themselves on their ruthless efficiency. Their leader, Captain Vorthar, was a battle-hardened veteran from the Zelleran species, known for their predatory instincts and a biological armor that made them nearly impervious to small arms fire. His team included elite marksmen from the Velithi, telepathic scouts from the Honor Collective, and a towering Zarnak brute whose sheer physical strength could level buildings. Together, they had toppled governments, stolen priceless artifacts, and silenced political dissidents for the right price. Humans, to them, were just another payday. Deathworlders, Vorthar scoffed during the briefing aboard their warship, Eviscerator. His silver exoskeleton glinted under the dim lighting as he studied the holographic report on Task Force Raven. Frail, short-lived mammals. Their reputation is overblown. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled mercenaries. None of them doubted the outcome of their mission. To ensure success, they'd studied every known human combat strategy, memorized troop formations, and prepared countermeasures for their primitive yet aggressive tactics. They expected simplicity. What they would find was something else entirely. At the same moment, Task Force Raven's leader, Commander Arya Vance, leaned over a table cluttered with maps, data tablets, and cups of cold coffee. Her team of 6 operatives sat around her, clad in high-tech combat suits that amplified their physical abilities and masked their thermal signatures. The room was buried within the heart of an ancient geothermal facility, its walls streaked with frost despite the heat radiating from the machinery below. Outside, the howling winds of Glaver 7 screamed against the reinforced walls. "We're being hunted," Arya stated, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. Her team, seasoned veterans with scars to prove it, exchanged knowing looks. Sergeant Morales, the team's demolitions expert, raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Council mercs?" "Umbra Blades," Arya confirmed. The room went silent. Even for a team as experienced as Raven, the reputation of the Umbra Blades was daunting. But fear wasn't something Deathworlders entertained for long. "Well," Morales said with a grin, "this just got interesting." "Interesting isn't the word I'd use," muttered Specialist Rami, their tech and drone operator. "They're probably watching us already." "That's the point," Arya said, tapping the table to bring up a holographic map of the facility and its surroundings. "They think they know us. They think we're predictable. So we'll show them exactly what they expect, until it's too late." The plan was simple, at least in theory. Humans thrived on adaptability, and Task Force Raven embodied that principle. Their greatest weapon wasn't their gear or firepower, it was their ability to outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. And they were about to prove why humans were feared across the galaxy. As the Eviscerator entered Glaver 7's orbit, Vorthar gave his orders with precision. The plan was to strike hard and fast, overwhelming Task Force Raven before they could organize a defense. Dropships carrying squads of mercenaries descended through the chaotic atmosphere, braving electrical storms and sub-zero temperatures. They landed in a wide perimeter around the geothermal facility, ensuring no escape routes. The first squad to enter the facility was led by Zarnak Brute Grash. His heavy footsteps echoed ominously in the ice-lined corridors as his team moved with practiced efficiency. They expected resistance, tripwires, automated defenses, maybe a few unlucky humans trying to hold their ground. Instead, they found nothing. The silence was unsettling. Grash's glowing red eyes scanned the dark halls, his claws flexing as he sniffed the air. "They're hiding," he growled, his voice like grinding stone. "Flush them out." As his team advanced deeper into the facility, a faint sound reached their ears, a rhythmic tapping. It echoed strangely, growing louder with every step. Then came a hiss of static, followed by a distorted human voice over the facility's intercom. "Welcome to Glaver 7. The voice drawled, laced with mockery. "We've been expecting you." Before Grash could respond, the corridor exploded in chaos. Flashbangs erupted, blinding the mercenaries as automated turrets emerged from hidden compartments in the walls, firing precise bursts. Smoke grenades filled the space, disorienting the aliens further. When the smoke cleared, Grash found half his squad incapacitated, and not a single human in sight. Meanwhile, in another section of the facility, a Velethi sniper attempted to establish a vantage point overlooking the geothermal vents. As she set up her rifle, a faint clicking sound drew her attention. She turned just in time to see a small, spider-like drone scuttle across the floor and attach itself to her weapon. It beeped cheerfully before detonating in a burst of electromagnetic energy, frying her gear and sending her tumbling into the freezing depths below. Across the facility, similar scenes played out. Task Force Raven had turned the environment into a deadly labyrinth, using traps, drones, and psychological warfare to sow confusion among their attackers. The humans themselves remained unseen, their movements ghost-like as they struck from the shadows and vanished before the mercenaries could retaliate. Vorthar, monitoring the chaos from the eviscerator, felt his confidence waver for the first time. The reports coming in from his squads painted a grim picture. This wasn't a simple mission against primitive Deathworlders. This was something far worse. Deep within the facility, Arya watched the unfolding mayhem through a network of hidden cameras. Her team moved with practiced precision, exploiting every weakness in the mercenaries' tactics. Morales had rigged half the geothermal vents to erupt on command, turning the moon's unstable terrain into a weapon. Rami's drones buzzed through the halls, feeding real-time data to the team and harassing the enemy at every turn. "They're breaking," Arya observed, her tone calm but focused. "Push harder. Make them regret ever stepping foot here." Her team responded with grim determination. This was no longer just a mission, it was a message. The Galactic Council had sent their best to crush a handful of Deathworlders. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. The atmosphere aboard the eviscerator grew tense as the reports from the ground became increasingly dire. Captain Vorthar paced the bridge, his sharp claws tapping against the metal floor. Around him, the command crew worked feverishly, analyzing the fragmented data streams from their scattered squads. "Losses are unacceptable," Vorthar snarled. His crimson eyes locked onto the tactical officer, an honor with tendrils that twitched nervously under the captain's glare. "What's happening down there?" "Sir," the honor stammered, "their tactics are unconventional. Our forces are encountering traps, automated defenses, and guerrilla strikes. The humans are using the terrain against us." Vorthar's frustration boiled over. He slammed his fist onto the console, denting the metal. "They are vermin! Isolate them, overwhelm them, and eradicate them. Deploy the heavy squads and activate countermeasures." Back on Glaver 7, Task Force Raven was well aware of the escalation. Through intercepted communications, Rami had identified the reinforcements being deployed, heavy infantry units equipped with shields and energy disruptors specifically designed to counter human technology. "They're adapting," Rami reported, his hands flying over the controls of his portable console. "They're bringing out the big guns." "Good," Morales said with a wicked grin, hoisting a satchel of explosives over his shoulder. "Bigger targets make bigger booms." Arya wasn't so easily amused. "We're running out of time. The longer this drags on, the more resources they'll throw at us. We need to change the game." The team gathered in their makeshift command center, a dimly lit room deep within the geothermal facility. The walls vibrated faintly from the distant hum of the moon's volcanic activity. Aria's sharp eyes scanned the holographic map, pinpointing the locations of the incoming squads. "They think they've cornered us," she said. "Let's use that." Her plan was simple but audacious: lure the mercenaries into a bottleneck near the facility's unstable geothermal core. By controlling the environment, they could force their enemies into a disadvantage. It was a high-risk strategy, but high risks were Raven's specialty. The first phase of the plan involved a calculated retreat. Task Force Raven abandoned their positions, leaving behind a trail of breadcrumbs for the mercenaries to follow. These weren't just ordinary traps. They were designed to play on the psychology of their enemies. Abandoned weapons, flickering holograms, and scattered human chatter over unsecured channels created an illusion of desperation. The mercenaries took the bait. Grash, leading one of the heavy squads, charged ahead with his characteristic recklessness. His armored frame plowed through the narrow corridors, and his booming voice echoed through the facility. "They're running scared! Push forward!" Behind him, a squad of Velithi marksmen and honor scouts moved in tight formation, their weapons sweeping the halls. They thought they were advancing on a retreating enemy. In reality, they were walking into a trap. As Grash rounded a corner, the floor beneath him collapsed. The Zarnak brute roared in fury as he plunged into a pit of boiling geothermal mud, his thick armor offering little protection against the searing heat. His squad froze, their confidence evaporating in an instant. Before they could react, the walls came alive with automated turrets, cutting them down with brutal efficiency. From a hidden vantage point, Morales watched the chaos unfold. He tapped his comms. "That's one big problem, melted." "Focus, Morales," Aria's voice came through. "The main force is still on their way." Meanwhile, Vorthar grew increasingly impatient. The losses were mounting, and the humans were still nowhere to be found. He ordered his remaining forces to regroup and converge on the geothermal core. It was the only logical location for the humans to make a final stand. As the mercenaries advanced, the environment itself seemed to turn against them. Explosions from concealed charges caused sections of the facility to collapse, forcing them into tighter and more vulnerable formations. Sudden bursts of scalding steam from ruptured pipes disoriented even the most seasoned soldiers. The humans weren't just defending the facility, they were weaponizing it. By the time the mercenaries reached the core, their numbers had been halved. Vorthar, leading the remaining forces personally, was seething with rage. His exoskeleton glowed faintly from the heat, and his claws flexed with anticipation. "End this," he growled. "Find the humans and kill them." But the humans weren't hiding. They were waiting. The core chamber was a vast, cavernous space dominated by a massive geothermal reactor. The air shimmered with heat, and the sound of rumbling magma filled the room. Task Force Raven had fortified the area, turning it into a death trap. As the mercenaries entered, they were met with a coordinated assault. Aria led the charge, her movements swift and precise as she fired bursts from her plasma rifle. Morales detonated charges with surgical precision, collapsing catwalks and sending mercenaries tumbling into the fiery depths below. Rami's drones zipped through the chaos, blinding enemies with flash grenades and disrupting their communications. Vorthar fought like a beast unleashed, tearing through the humans' defenses with brute strength and unrelenting fury. But even he couldn't match the ingenuity of Task Force Raven. Using a combination of traps, diversions, and teamwork, the humans isolated him from his forces. As the battle reached its peak, Aria confronted Vorthar near the edge of the reactor's containment field. The captain loomed over her, his crimson eyes burning with hatred. "You cannot win, Deathworlder," he snarled. "You are but insects." Aria didn't flinch. "Funny," she said, leveling her rifle. "That's what everyone says right before we crush them." With a deafening roar, the reactor's containment field began to destabilize. Alarms blared as the entire chamber was bathed in a red glow. Aria signaled her team. "Fall back! Now!" As Task Force Raven retreated, the core erupted in a controlled explosion, obliterating the remaining mercenaries and sealing the facility in a molten tomb. The humans escaped through a hidden passageway, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. On board the Eviscerator, Vorthar's second-in-command watched in stunned silence as the sensors registered the loss of their ground forces. "Captain," she whispered, her voice trembling, "the mission has failed." Vorthar's rage was matched only by his disbelief. The Deathworlders, against all odds, had turned the tide. The message was clear: humanity was not to be trifled with. As the Eviscerator retreated into the void, Arya and her team watched from a safe distance. Their mission was complete, but the war was far from over. Humanity's reputation had been solidified, and the Galactic Council had learned a hard lesson. When you provoke a Deathworlder, you'd better be prepared to face the consequences. The Galactic Council's failure to heed the warnings about humanity had now become the stuff of whispered legends. Task Force Raven's triumph against Vorthar's mercenaries sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Within the halls of power, councilors debated whether to escalate or retreat, each fearing the repercussions of either decision. Meanwhile, a coalition of mercenary clans, outraged by their humiliating defeat, prepared for retaliation. Humanity was no longer just a problem, it was now a target. Back on Earth, Task Force Raven wasn't celebrating their victory. The team knew that retaliation was inevitable. Arya stood in the underground command center, her gaze fixed on a holographic map of the known galaxy. Her sharp features were illuminated by the glow of blinking stars and hostile territories. "We've bought time, but not much," she said, addressing her team. "They'll come back, stronger and angrier. This was a warning shot, and the next one will be an all-out war." Morales leaned back in his chair, his usual smirk replaced by a grim expression. "So, what's the plan? We can't exactly fight the entire galaxy." Arya's eyes narrowed. "We won't have to. We just need to hit them where it hurts." Meanwhile, aboard the Eviscerator, Vorthar's replacement, Commander Rathnok, had taken charge. A calculating strategist with a reputation for brutal efficiency, Rathnok wasn't interested in vengeance. He wanted results. He studied the data from the failed campaign on Glaver 7, analyzing every trap, every ambush, every countermeasure the humans had deployed. "These Deathworlders," he muttered to himself, "don't fight like other species. They don't just survive, they adapt, they innovate, they thrive under pressure." His subordinates gathered around him as he unveiled his plan. "We'll strike at their heart. Not their military, but their spirit. If humanity relies on their ingenuity and resilience, then we'll break their morale. Without it, they're just another upstart species." Rathnok's strategy was to infiltrate Earth itself, sow chaos, and dismantle humanity's infrastructure from within. It was a bold and risky plan, but one he believed would succeed where brute force had failed. Task Force Raven didn't wait for the enemy's next move. Using the intel they had extracted from Vorthar's communications, Rami had pinpointed a secret Galactic Council supply depot hidden on a remote asteroid. This depot was a critical hub for mercenary forces, supplying weapons, armor, and advanced technology. "If we hit this," Rami explained, "we cut off their reinforcements before they even reach us. It won't stop the war, but it'll slow them down." The team geared up for the mission. The depot was heavily guarded, its defenses designed to repel entire fleets. But Raven wasn't an ordinary force. Their strength lay in their ability to operate in the shadows, striking with precision and disappearing before anyone knew what hit them. The approach to the asteroid was treacherous. The facility was surrounded by automated turrets, patrolling drones, and a dense asteroid field that made navigation nearly impossible. Rami piloted their stealth ship, threading it through the deadly maze with practiced ease. Every sharp turn and near miss sent Morales into a string of colorful curses, while Arya remained silent, her focus unshakable. As they landed in a blind spot near the depot's outer perimeter, the team moved with practiced efficiency. Arya took point, her rifle at the ready, while Rami deployed a swarm of drones to map the interior. Morales carried enough explosives to level a small city, his grin returning as he anticipated the chaos to come. Inside the depot, The mercenaries were unprepared for what hit them. Raven moved like ghosts, dismantling security systems and neutralizing guards before alarms could be raised. They planted charges on key infrastructure, fuel cells, weapons caches, and communication relays. But as they reached the control room, Rami's drones picked up an anomaly. "We've got company," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "A lot of company." Rathnok, anticipating a retaliatory strike, had stationed reinforcements nearby. The facility was suddenly swarming with troops, their footsteps echoing through the metal corridors. The element of surprise was gone. Arya's mind raced. They couldn't afford to be trapped here. "Morales, how fast can you rig this place to blow?" "Fast enough," he replied, already setting timers on his explosives. "But we're gonna have to fight our way out." The team dug in, using the depot's layout to their advantage. They set up choke points, laid down suppressing fire, and deployed decoys to confuse the enemy. Morales's explosives created walls of fire and debris, forcing the mercenaries to split their forces. But the odds were against them. The mercenaries' sheer numbers began to take their toll, and Raven was running out of ammo and time. Arya knew they couldn't hold out much longer. "Rami," she said, "is there another way out?" Rami's fingers flew over his console as he scanned the schematics. "There's an emergency exit near the reactor core. It's risky, but it's our best shot." The team made a break for the reactor core, fighting off relentless waves of mercenaries. The heat and radiation in the chamber were almost unbearable, but Raven pushed forward, their determination outweighing their exhaustion. As they reached the emergency exit, Morales detonated the charges, triggering a chain reaction that tore through the depot. The explosion was catastrophic, ripping the asteroid apart and sending debris hurtling into space. Raven's ship barely escaped the blast, its engines straining as Rami pushed them to the limit. As they emerged from the chaos, the team watched the burning remains of the depot disappear behind them. It was a victory, but a costly one. Raven had survived, but the war was far from over. On board his flagship, Rathnok received the news with grim satisfaction. The humans had won the battle, but they had exposed their greatest weakness, their reliance on small, elite teams. He began devising his next move, one that would test humanity's resolve like never before. Back on Earth, Arya knew the fight was only beginning. The Galactic Council wouldn't stop until humanity was either conquered or destroyed. But she also knew one thing for certain: Raven would be ready. "They think they can break us," she said, her voice steely with determination. "Let's show them just how wrong they are." The Galactic Council was no longer under any illusions about humanity. Reports of Task Force Raven's daring assaults had spread like wildfire, shaking the Council's faith in their mercenaries. The destruction of the depot had sent ripples across the galactic power structure, forcing allies to reconsider their loyalties and mercenaries to question their contracts. On the War Council's central chamber, Rathnok addressed the assembled alien generals and warlords. His tone was sharp, his frustration barely contained. "The humans are resilient, yes. But their victories have been by stealth, not strength. They cannot stand against us in open combat." "Open combat hasn't worked either," a counselor argued, his voice trembling. "Our fleets have been destroyed, our mercenaries humiliated. This species, these Deathworlders, fight like nothing we've ever encountered." A ripple of agreement swept through the chamber. Rathnok slammed his fist on the table, silencing them. "Then we make them fight on our terms. Humanity has relied on small, elite teams to outmaneuver us. We will force them into a confrontation they cannot escape. We will trap them on their own homeworld." The plan was audacious. The Galactic Council would launch a full-scale invasion of Earth. No surgical strikes, no infiltration, just overwhelming force, designed to crush humanity's spirit and ensure no further resistance. It was a final gambit, one that Rathnok believed would succeed where others had failed. On Earth, the skies darkened with alien warships. The invasion came without warning, a massive fleet appearing in orbit and deploying countless drop pods onto the surface. Major cities turned into war zones as alien forces poured into the streets, overwhelming human defenses with their sheer numbers. Explosions rattled the air, skyscrapers crumbled, and civilians scrambled to evacuate. Task Force Raven, battered but unbroken, regrouped at a hidden command bunker beneath a mountain range. Arya stood at the center of the chaos, surrounded by officers, soldiers, and analysts coordinating the resistance. Holographic maps showed dozens of red blips marking enemy positions. Earth was under siege. "They're trying to drown us with numbers," Morales said, clutching his rifle. "Typical Council tactics." Arya's expression was unreadable as she studied the maps. "And we'll do what humans always do when the odds are impossible. We fight smarter." The Galactic Council underestimated humanity's resolve. Every city the aliens invaded turned into a death trap. Guerrilla fighters ambushed their patrols, snipers picked off high-value targets, and traps hidden in seemingly abandoned buildings ripped apart armored walkers. Humans fought not just with weapons but with ingenuity, using terrain, technology, and sheer willpower to resist an enemy that outnumbered them 100 to 1. Task Force Raven became the symbol of humanity's defiance. Arya led precision strikes against enemy command posts, cutting off communications and supplies. Morales turned entire neighborhoods into mazes of explosives, forcing the aliens into unwinnable battles. Rami hacked into enemy surveillance systems, feeding the resistance real-time data on troop movements. Earth's resistance became a nightmare for the Galactic Council. Rathnok watched, helpless, as his forces stalled. Each day that passed cost him ships, soldiers, and morale. His advisors warned him that prolonged occupation was unsustainable. "They're everywhere," Rathnok snarled as he reviewed battle footage. "Every street, every corner, they fight like they were born for this. This is their homeworld," one of his lieutenants replied. "Every inch of it is a weapon." But Rathnok refused to retreat. He doubled down, deploying heavy artillery and orbital bombardments to level entire cities. The alien broadcasts announced Earth's inevitable fall, but humanity knew better. They endured, and with every attack, they grew stronger. Arya's plan to turn the tide was as bold as it was desperate. "Take out their flagship," she told her team as they gathered for a final briefing. "The entire invasion fleet relies on Rathnok's command vessel for coordination. If we destroy it, their forces will collapse." "Yeah, and how do we do that?" Morales asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's sitting in orbit surrounded by half the Galactic Council's navy." Arya smirked. "By making them think we're not coming." The plan relied on misdirection. While Earth's resistance launched diversionary attacks across the planet, Task Force Raven would infiltrate the flagship using a stolen alien drop pod. Rami's hacking skills had already disabled parts of the ship's security systems, but the team would still need to fight their way to the reactor core. "This is a one-way mission," Arya admitted. "We get in, we destroy the flagship, and we send a message to the galaxy: humanity doesn't kneel." The drop pod hit the flagship like a meteor. Task Force Raven burst out, weapons blazing as they cut through alien soldiers. Arya led the charge, her movements precise and deadly. Morales unleashed grenades that turned hallways into firestorms, while Rami guided them through the ship's labyrinthine corridors. Every step of the way, they were met with resistance. Rathnok had anticipated sabotage, and his elite guards put up a brutal fight. Blaster fire filled the air, and the ship's alarms screamed as explosions rocked the hull. "Move, move!" Arya shouted as they pushed toward the reactor core. Morales covered their flank, his face streaked with sweat and grime. At the heart of the flagship, the team reached the reactor, a massive, pulsing chamber of energy. Rami rigged explosives to the core, his fingers working faster than ever before. "We've got 2 minutes!" he yelled. The team fought their way back to the drop pod as the countdown ticked away. Morales dragged a wounded Rami through the smoke while Arya covered them, her rifle never missing a shot. The flagship trembled as the reactor destabilized, sparks and debris raining down around them. As the team boarded the pod, the reactor detonated. A shockwave tore through the ship, splitting it apart as fire consumed the hull. Task Force Raven's pod rocketed away, escaping just as the flagship erupted in a blinding explosion visible from the planet below. The Galactic Council's fleet crumbled without Rathnok's command. Disoriented and leaderless, the remaining ships retreated, abandoning Earth to its battered but victorious defenders. In the aftermath, humanity emerged from the ashes stronger than ever. Task Force Raven became legends, their story spreading across the galaxy as a warning to anyone who dared challenge Earth. The Galactic Council, once so certain of its power, now understood the cost of provoking Deathworlders. In a message broadcast across the stars, Arya delivered humanity's final words to their enemies. "You thought we were weak. You thought you could break us. But humans don't just survive, we endure, we adapt, and we hunt those who threaten us. You wanted war? Now you know why alien mercenaries fear us." And somewhere, in the darkest corners of space, alien warlords listened. For the first time in millennia, they understood what it meant to fear. Humanity had been tested. And the galaxy would never forget the answer.